que ocurre en la universidad, los acontecimientos y sus protagonistas están en UMNG Radio.
Tune in and speak up. Hello, English learners. Want to learn something interesting whilst having fun? Welcome to Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast where you'll get to know this beautiful language in depth. Each week, we'll dive into exciting topics, share practical tips, and tell you fascinating English language stories. So whether you're studying, going to work, or just relaxing, connect, listen, and let's make English part of your world. Wherever you are, whenever you want, just hit play, tune in and listen up. Tune in to UMNG Radio every Tuesday from 11 a.m. till noon. Don't just learn English, live it.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast from Universidad Militar Nueva Granada, where we explore curious stories, surprising facts, and cultural insights from around the world, all through the lens of English learning. This is the podcast where unusual moments from history and culture become your classroom for practicing English. I'm Jorge Bermúdez, teacher of English at the Department of Multicultural Studies at UMNG, part of the School of Education and Humanities. I'll be your guide through some of the most unexpected and thought-provoking topics, from forgotten inventions and everyday objects to strange ideas that quietly changed the way we live. Whether you're learning English as a second language or simply enjoy discovering how culture and history shaped our daily lives, this podcast is for you. So if you're ready to improve your listening skills, expand your vocabulary, and explore the hidden stories behind ordinary things, grab your headphones, tune in, and let's speak up. Today, birth of the bicycle, a small machine that changed everyday life. Okay, let's go to our introduction. The bicycle looks simple. Two wheels, a frame, pedals, a chain. But this simple machine changed the world in quiet and powerful ways. Before bicycles, personal travel was limited. Walking was slow, horses were expensive, carriages belonged to the rich. For many people, daily life happened close to home because moving farther was difficult. The bicycle changed that. For the first time in history, ordinary people could travel longer distances using only their own energy. No fuel, no animals, no special training. Just balance, movement, and practice. The bicycle did not arrive fully formed. It evolved over time through experiments, mistakes, and improvements. Early versions had no pedals. Others were dangerous and unstable. Some designs failed completely. But each step brought humans closer to a machine that felt natural, almost like an extension of the body. More than a new form of transport, the bicycle created new ideas of freedom. People could leave their neighborhoods. Workers could live farther from factories. Cities began to expand. Time and space felt different. The bicycle also changed society. It played a role in women's independence, allowing a greater mobility at a time when social rules were strict. It influenced clothing, health, and ideas about the human body. Doctors, reformers, and educators all discussed the bicycle, sometimes with excitement, sometimes with fear. Some people saw it as dangerous, others saw it as revolutionary. In this episode, we will explore how the bicycle was invented, how it developed, and why such a simple machine had such a deep impact on daily life, culture, and modern cities. Because sometimes the inventions that change the world the most are not the biggest ones, but the ones that move us forward, one turn at a time. Okay, and that takes us to our segment 1, the running machine and the first attempts at balance. The story of the bicycle does not begin with pedals, chains, or gears. It begins with balance. In the early 19th century, people were searching for new ways to move faster on land without using animals. Roads were improving, cities were growing, and travel was becoming more important for work and daily life. In 1817, a German inventor named Carl von Drais, here in the picture, introduced a strange new machine. It had 2 wheels, one behind the other, connected by a wooden frame. The rider sat on the frame and pushed the machine forward with their feet. This invention was called the running machine, here in the picture, also known as the Draisine. There were no pedals, no brakes, no chains. Movement came only from the rider's legs. At first, the running machine looked impractical and even funny. Riders pushed, lifted their feet, and tried to glide forward. But something important was happening. For the first time, people were learning how to balance on 2 wheels while moving. This was not easy. Balance is natural when we walk, but it feels strange on a narrow machine. Early riders fell often. Many people believed humans were not meant to move this way. Some cities even banned the running machine from sidewalks because it caused accidents. Still, the idea spread. Why? Because it worked. On smooth roads, the running machine was faster than walking. Riders could travel longer distances with less effort. Once they learned balance, movement became smoother and more controlled. The running machine also changed how people thought about transport. It showed that a person could move efficiently without animals or engines. The human body itself became the motor. Even though the running machine did not last long as a popular invention, its importance was enormous. It introduced 2 key ideas: travel based on human power and movement based on balance, not stability. Later bicycle designs would build on these ideas. Pedals, chains, and gears would come later. But without this first experiment, the bicycle might never have existed. The running machine was not a finished solution, it was a question. And that question was simple but powerful. Can humans learn to move forward by balancing instead of standing still? The rest of the bicycle's history is the answer. And that takes us to our next segment: pedals, cranks, and the first true bicycles. Balance was only the beginning. After the running machine showed that humans could move on 2 wheels, inventors began asking a new question. How can we move without pushing our feet on the ground? The answer was simple but revolutionary: pedals. In the 1860s, several inventors in France began experimenting with ways to attach pedals directly to the front wheel. The most famous early design is often linked to Pierre Michaud and his workshop in Paris. This new machine was called the velocipede, here in the picture on the left. Unlike the running machine, the rider no longer pushed with their feet. Instead, pedals were fixed to the front wheel and turned with a circular motion. This allowed continuous movement and higher speeds. For the first time, the bicycle became a self-powered vehicle. However, early velocipedes were far from comfortable. They were made mostly of wood and iron. The wheels had no rubber tires. Roads were uneven and full of stones. Riding one felt like shaking your entire body. Because of this, the velocipede earned a famous nickname, the Bone Shaker. Still, people loved it. Velocipedes became fashionable in European cities. Riding schools opened. Bicycle clubs formed. For many people, this was their first experience of independent, fast movement without animals. But there was a problem. Since the pedals were attached directly to the front wheel, speed depended on wheel size. To go faster, inventors made the front wheel bigger and bigger. This led to the high wheel bicycle, also known as the penny farthing, here on the picture to the right. These bicycles had a very large front wheel, a tiny back wheel, a high seat far above the ground. They were fast but dangerous. Getting on and off required skill. Falling from such a height could cause serious injuries. This type of bicycle was mainly used by young men with good balance and physical strength. Even so, the pedal and crank system changed everything. It proved that continuous motion was possible, human power could be controlled and multiplied, and speed no longer depended only on pushing the ground. The bicycle was no longer an experiment. It was becoming a real form of transport. What it still needed was safety, and that change would open the bicycle to everyone. The bicycle did not truly change the world until it became safe. By the late 19th century, inventors understood a simple truth. If a machine is fast but dangerous, only a few people will use it. If it's safe, society will change. The breakthrough came in the 1880s with the invention of the safety bicycle, here on the picture. At first glance, the safety bicycle looked less exciting than the tall, dramatic high-wheel models, but its design was revolutionary. It had two wheels of the same size, a lower seat closer to the ground, a chain drive that moved the rear wheel, and better balance and control. The most influential model was the Rover safety bicycle, in the picture, introduced in 1885 by John Kemp Starley in England. This bicycle solved several problems at once. Instead of attaching pedals directly to the front wheel, the safety bicycle used a chain and gears. This allowed riders to control speed without making the wheel dangerously large. For the first time, a cyclist could start smoothly, stop safely, turn easily, and ride longer distances with confidence. This design looks familiar today because it became the standard bicycle design we still use. But the true revolution was not mechanical. It was social. The safety bicycle opened cycling to people who had been excluded before. A bicycle for everyone. High-wheel bicycles were mostly used by young, wealthy men. They required strength, training, and courage. Safety bicycles changed that. Now, women could ride, older people could ride, workers could ride, and middle-class families could afford bicycles. For many people, this was their first experience of personal freedom of movement. You did not need a horse, you did not need a driver, you did not need permission. You just rode. In cities, bicycles transformed daily life. Workers could live farther from their jobs. Students could travel independently, and small towns became more connected. And that takes us to our next segment. Bicycles, women, and the definition of freedom. When the safety bicycle appeared, it did more than improve transportation. It quietly began to change how society saw women and how women saw themselves. Before bicycles became common, most women's movement in public space was limited. Long distances required carriages, money, or male assistance. Walking was slow, and public transport was not always available or safe. The bicycle changed this situation in a simple but powerful way. For the first time, a woman could decide where to go, when to go, and how fast to travel using only her own strength. This independence was new and deeply unsettling for many people at the time. In the late 19th century, newspapers and social commentators often warned that cycling was dangerous not just for the body, but for morality. Some claimed it would make women too independent, too confident, or too visible in public life. But despite criticism, women rode anyway. The bicycle became a symbol of self-direction, a physical expression of personal choice. Clothing, comfort, and quiet rebellion. One of the most visible changes caused by bicycles was clothing. Traditional women's fashion made cycling almost impossible. Long skirts, corset, and heavy layers restricted movement and caused accidents. To ride safely, women began wearing shorter skirts, divided skirts, and bloomers or loose trousers. This was not just a fashion change, it was a challenge to strict social rules. Choosing practical clothing meant choosing comfort over appearance, movement over decoration, and function over tradition. Many people reacted strongly. Some mocked women cyclists. Others tried to ban bicycles for women in certain places. But the bicycle made these changes unavoidable. Once a woman experienced the freedom of riding, the wind, the speed, the control, it was difficult to accept going back. The bicycle and the women's rights movement. The bicycle also became closely connected to the women's rights movement. Activists and riders saw it as a tool of equality because it gave women physical independence, access to education and work, and a visible presence in public spaces. The American activist Susan B. Anthony, here in the picture on the left, famously said that the bicycle had done more for women's freedom than almost anything else because it allowed women to move through the world on their own terms. In Europe and North America, women cyclists formed clubs, organized rides, and appeared in advertisements, posters, and photographs, not as passengers, but as riders. The image of a woman on a bicycle began to represent confidence, modernity, and change. And then a redefinition of freedom. The bicycle did not solve inequality, but it helped redefine freedom in everyday life. Freedom was no longer only political or legal. It became physical, practical, and daily. Being able to ride meant choosing your own route, controlling your own pace, and trusting your own balance. This idea extended beyond women. It influenced how society thought about mobility, independence, and personal space. The bicycle showed that freedom does not always arrive loudly or dramatically. Sometimes it arrives quietly, on two wheels, powered by your own legs. And that takes us to our fifth segment, cities, roads, and the bicycle's lasting legacy. The bicycle did not only change individual lives, it reshaped cities, roads, and the way modern societies think about movement. In the late 19th century, most roads were not designed for bicycles or cars. They were rough, muddy, and uneven, made mainly for horses and carts. Riding a bicycle on these roads was difficult, uncomfortable, and sometimes dangerous. But as bicycles became more popular, cyclists began to demand better infrastructure. This led to the Good Roads movement, first in Europe and later in the United States, where bicycle users organized clubs and campaigns to pressure governments to improve road surfaces, drainage, and signage. Interestingly, many of the roads later used by cars were first improved because of bicycles. The bicycles helped prepare the world for modern transportation. And then the urban space was redefined. As bicycles spread, cities began to change shape. People were no longer limited to walking distance from their homes. Workers could live farther from factories. Students could travel to schools outside their neighborhoods. Leisure rides became common on weekends. Cities slowly expanded outward, not only because of trains, but because bicycles made medium distances realistic for everyday life. The bicycle also introduced a new idea: shared public space. Streets were no longer just for commerce or animals. They became spaces for movement, recreation, and personal travel. This forced cities to think differently about traffic flow, safety, lighting, and public responsibility. In many ways, the bicycle was the first challenge to the idea that streets belonged only to vehicles or economic activity. Okay, from past to present. Even after cars became dominant in the 20th century, the bicycle never disappeared. Instead, it adapted. During fuel shortages, wars, and economic crises, bicycles returned as reliable, affordable transport. In recent decades, they have gained new importance because of concerns about pollution, traffic congestion, climate change, and public health. Cities around the world are now redesigning streets with bike lanes, traffic calming measures, and cycling networks, often inspired by the same ideas that cyclists promoted more than a century ago. What began as a simple mechanical solution has become part of discussions about sustainability and quality of life. And then we have our city of Bogota. Bogota's bicycle network, a modern success story. Bogota, our capital, has become a leader in bicycle infrastructure in Latin America. The city now has over 630 kilometers of dedicated bike lanes, known locally as ciclorutas, connecting neighborhoods, parks, and transport hubs across the city. These lanes are part of a long-term push for sustainable, healthy mobility and expand every year to reach more people and destinations. Some sources even note over 660 kilometers when combining permanent bike lanes with additional network features, reflecting both continuous investment and community use. This extensive network has helped Bogota reduce dependence on cars, encourage daily cycling for work, school, and errands, and support safe and active travel for a large number of residents. But building miles of bike-specific infrastructure, Bogota has shown how urban design can make bicycles not just a recreational tool, but a central part of city life. The bicycle's legacy is not only technical or historical. It represents a different philosophy of movement. It shows that progress does not always mean more speed or more power. Sometimes progress means balance between body and machine, between city and citizen, between freedom and responsibility. The bicycle continues to remind us that human-scale solutions can shape entire societies, quietly, efficiently, one pedal at a time. And then we have our segment number 6, from streets to gyms to spectacle. How the bicycle crossed every border. By the time the bicycle had transformed cities and reshaped everyday movement, it did something even more remarkable. It escaped the street and entered completely different areas of human life without ever losing its identity. The bicycle did not stay in one place. It moved indoors. It entered gyms, hospitals, and homes where it stopped being a vehicle and became a tool for health, discipline, and self-improvement. On stationary bicycles, riders no longer travel through space. Instead, they travel through time, effort, and resistance, measuring heartbeats, calories, and endurance. In these spaces, the bicycle represents control. You choose the rhythm. You decide when to stop. Movement becomes personal, private, and repetitive. And yet, at the very same time, the bicycle also moved in the opposite direction. It became public spectacle. At the beginning of the 20th century, large cycling competitions transformed the bicycle into something people did not just ride, but watched, followed, and felt deeply connected to. Races like the Tour de France, first held in 1903, here we have a picture of the first Tour de France, turned ordinary roads into legendary stages and ordinary riders into heroes. Millions of people began to gather along roadsides, sometimes waiting for hours just to see cyclists pass for a few seconds. Mountains, villages, and entire regions became famous not because of politics or industry, but because bicycles crossed them. In these races, the bicycle represents struggle, pain, endurance, collective emotion. Some people memorize climbs and stages. Others grow up watching races every summer. For them, cycling is not just a sport. It is a tradition, identity, and passion. What makes this extraordinary is that it is the same object, the same basic invention. Moves a worker across a city, trains a body inside a gym, and carries athletes across entire continents. In one place, the bicycle stands still. In another, it moves endlessly forward. It belongs both to quiet individual effort and to massive collective excitement. Very few inventions cross so many borders so easily. The bicycle adapts without losing its essence. It remains human-powered, simple, and direct, even as its meanings change. Whether used for commuting, exercising, or racing at the highest level, it continues to connect body, space, and purpose. This is why the bicycle is not only part of transportation history or sports history. It is part of cultural history. It teaches us that technology does not have to dominate human life to transform it. Sometimes it simply needs to fit into daily routines and then expand quietly into places we never expected. The bicycle and a quiet question about the world we build. At some point, when we step back and look at the bicycle carefully, a deeper question begins to appear. Not about transportation, not about sport, but about the kind of world we have built. The bicycle is unusual because it works too well. It moves people efficiently, cheaply, and reliably, without fuel, without noise, and without constant replacement. Once you own a bicycle, you can keep using it for years with very little cost, very little infrastructure, and very little dependence on large systems. And this is where some people begin to say that the cyclist is an enemy of capitalism. Not because cyclists are against markers or technology, but because the bicycle quietly challenges a central idea of modern consumer society, that progress must always mean more consumption, more energy, and more profit. A person on a bicycle does not need to buy fuel every week. They do not need complex machines or expensive systems to move. They rely mostly on their own body and on shared public space. In that sense, the bicycle reduces dependence, not only on cars, but on entire economic structures built around them. This does not make cycling a protest, it makes it a question. The bicycle asks, how much technology do we really need to live well? How fast is fast enough? When does convenience stop being freedom and start becoming dependence? At the same time, the bicycle shows the limits of this idea. Capitalism did not disappear because of bicycles. Instead, it adapted. Today, there are professional races sponsored by global brands, luxury bicycles that cost more than cars, and fitness bikes connected to apps that turn every moment into data. The bicycle exists inside capitalism, but never completely belongs to it. It remains a reminder that some of the most powerful tools in human history are not the most profitable ones. They are the ones that fit the human body, respect human limits, and improve everyday life without demanding constant growth. This is why the bicycle keeps returning in moments of crisis, during fuel shortages, economic difficulty, or environmental concern. When systems become too heavy, the bicycle feels light again. In that sense, cycling is not an enemy of capitalism. It is a mirror. It reflects another possibility, a way of moving through the world that is slower, simpler, and more human, and quietly revolutionary precisely because it does not try to be. And that takes us to our next segment, our closing reflection. A quiet machine in a loud world. When we follow the story of the bicycle from its first unstable forms to its place in modern cities, gyms, and global competitions, it becomes clear that this is not only a story about transport or sport. It is a story about how humans choose to move through the world. The bicycle began as a solution to a simple problem: how to travel using your own body. But it slowly grew into something much larger. It reshaped cities and demanded better roads. It expanded freedom, especially for women. It crossed borders, moving indoors into gyms and outward into international races watched by millions. In one place, the bicycle stands still, turning movement into discipline and care for the body. In another, it flies across mountains, carrying the hopes, emotions, and obsessions of entire nations. And in everyday life, it moves quietly through streets, asking only for space, balance, and attention. What connects all these versions of the bicycle is not speed or power, but human control. Unlike many modern technologies, the bicycle does not separate the person from the machine. It does not hide effort. It does not promise unlimited growth or instant comfort. It asks for participation, patience, and rhythm. This is why some people say that cycling feels like a challenge to the world we live in. Not because it fights systems directly, but because it shows that another way is possible. A way that depends less on consumption and more on shared space, personal effort, and simple design. Capitalism adapted to the bicycle as it adapts to everything. It turned races into spectacles, bikes into products, and movement into data. And yet, something remains untouched. Every time someone rides a bicycle, they experience a small form of freedom that cannot be bought again and again. It is already there in the movement itself. The bicycle reminds us that not all revolutions arrive with noise, speed, or destruction. Some arrive slowly, quietly, and become part of daily life until they feel natural. Two wheels, a human body, and a way of moving that continues to ask an important question. What does progress really look like when it still fits the human scale? Okay, thank you so much for spending this time with me on Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast from Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. I hope you enjoyed our journey on the invention and development of the bicycle and discovered how even the most ordinary things can carry deep cultural meaning. If this episode helped you see everyday life a little differently or helped you connect language with history and culture in a new way, then this episode has done exactly what it was meant to do. Learning English is not only about grammar or vocabulary, it is also about understanding how people live, think, and express values through simple actions. This season, we will continue exploring unusual yet meaningful topics that reveal the strong connection between language, history, and daily experience. Each episode is designed to help you improve your listening skills, expand your vocabulary, and develop a deeper awareness of how culture shapes communication. If you found today's episode useful or interesting, feel free to share it with your classmates, friends, or fellow English learners. Learning becomes stronger when it is shared, discussed, and experienced together. And if you'd like to share your thoughts, reflections, or feedback, we would truly love to hear from you. Your ideas help us grow, and your voice helps shape future episodes. This podcast exists for learners like you, curious, thoughtful, and committed to improving step by step. We'll be back next week with another topic that may surprise you, make you reflect, or inspire new conversations in English. Until then, keep listening, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep exploring the world through language. And as always, keep speaking up. Until next time, Leito, thank you very much.
desde la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada, en Bogotá, Colombia. Transmite UMNG Radio. UMNG Radio. Una emisora alternativa, cultural e independiente. Desde la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. Esta es UMNG Radio.